Good evening. So, all right, I'm just getting everything set up here. Um, I'm hoping that today's going to go a little bit better. I once again will hopefully this time have figured out the problem with the audio. What I have decided to do is to just simply play the tracks off of my computer. I'm hoping that that will prevent any issues when it comes to low quality. Um, I think the biggest problem I'm currently running into when it is doing streams like this, and not just this, but also the news streams. I've noticed that there are issues connected to the video quality, and honestly, there's not much I can do about that. I'm sitting on a VPN. That's the only way I can access YouTube these days, and a lot of other websites. So, as that's the case, sometimes the connection is not super great. But at least with the music, I think the problem that I was running into is that I was on a VPN. And so I was trying to access a Russian music streaming website through a VPN and then trying to stream that back through to you. So I think that is basically where the problem was coming in. So I've got the tracks today on a um, on a playlist. So hopefully it'll be a situation where, since the sound is coming out of my computer, it won't be as much of an issue. I'm just getting everything lined up here so that when I do go from track to track, I'll be able to show you the album that I'm talking about as well. And there are quite a few of them. Quite a few of them today. In fact, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 20, 29. Honestly, thinking about that right now almost makes me a little nauseous, understanding that I'm going to have to go through all of that. But it's all right. It's A-OK. I am going to get us up here. And we are going to start today with electronic music. And not really sure why. I think just simply there were quite a bit of electronic music this week, more than I typically listen to. But that was partly just because there were a lot of EPs, among other things. So I had everything set up and ready to go before the stream started, aside from the artwork for the albums. So let me get everything set up here. And then I've got my notes in front of me, and then we'll be ready to go. I even have the playlist all pulled up and ready to go. So, but yeah, I'm assuming nobody's really waiting on me right now. So I can take an extra 10 seconds here to get everything ready. And if you're watching this after the fact, then you can just skip ahead like another minute and everything will be ready. Probably not a minute. In fact, just one more second. I'm going to open. All right. So, anyway, okay, we got 2 people there. That's good. All right, so we're going to jump into it. Like I said, we got a lot to get through. Quite a few of them are short, and I hope that everything will go. We're just going to go with the entire screen. All right, here we go for the infinity window. There it is, and we're going to jump to the first one. Now, this is an EP, Topchumba by Lazerchoke. I don't know if the title is a call out to Chumbawamba from the 1990s, but the sound definitely is. There are 3 really just banger tracks here with that UK big beat sound of the 1990s. Think Chemical Brothers or Fatboy Slim, musicians of that caliber. And the thing that makes this a bit more interesting is that the tracks are then laced through with these audio samples from films and show from the former Soviet Union. And just really, it's only 3 tracks, but they're very funky and just kind of fun all around. So let's give the title track a listen. A lot of Chemical Brothers going on here. You get the idea. So, yeah, good stuff. Pretty fun. Just quite short. And I suppose I should mention this is the first one. This is the first time I actually was quite organized. If you look at the description for the live video already, currently, right now, you will find links to all of these albums in Spotify, with the exception of one. There's a Bandcamp link for one of these here in the electronic section as well, too. So if you like any of these, you can click on the link immediately. I will be going in order, so that should make things a little bit easier. And in addition to that, I did start separating out the Russian singles playlists. So now there is a playlist for pop and indie music, a playlist for rock and metal, a playlist for electronic, and a playlist for rap. So there are 4 playlists currently. In the future, I might expand that into a folk, ethnic, experimental playlist as well, but we haven't had too many singles like that right now. So they're just kind of kicking around with the indie as it is. But yeah, so everything is set up. If you hear anything that you like, find the link down below. Everything is there and ready to go. Oh, sorry, wrong one. All right, next up we have Wemory or Wemory. I don't know how to say it. This is the Sound of the Sun EP. And this is left field techno. For those people who don't know, left field techno is that it's you could probably just call it like experimental techno. It's a little bit ambient. There's some electronic noise to it, but there are moments of dub and big beats similar to what we just heard as well. And it's a pretty chill EP, but it's laced through with the sounds of the coming spring, right? And even though winter here kind of refused to be cold, the promise of spring is still definitely intoxicating to some degree. So we'll check out what that sounds like a bit here. So you can hear the field recordings and that sort of ambient space there. But the birds, the moving water. I gotta turn it down because I'm gonna go deaf like that. So a bit melodic, but also sparse at the same time. And we can check out another track just to, again, field recordings. But definitely not winter sounds. That's the sound of life coming back. More of that big beat sound. So yeah, Wemory, Sound of the Sun EP. It does have a remix on there too, so it's really just 4 tracks with a remix. But yeah, it's nice. It's a nice kind of chill, introspective little EP worth checking out. All right, up next we have yet another EP. There's gonna be a lot of EPs here in the electronic music section. This is the Sidewalk EP, and it's a kind of a split with 2 producers, Elaflume and Skrew. This is, you can maybe guess from the artwork here. It's going to be drum and bass, jungle, that kind of UK underground dance techno, but it's not coming out of Britain. It's coming out of the Russian town of Ufa. And the sound is really trying to embody what they would sort of imagine as the streets. There's a lot of breakdance energy going on in the tracks. I would even say a little bit of that kind of early 90s hip hop vibe that they're really pushing for here. So let's give the track Rough It Up a listen. Jump ahead just a little bit. Really easy to vibe along with it. Got lots of little vocal samples too, which kind of keeps things interesting and moving. So yeah, it goes on like that for a little bit, obviously. There's 6 tracks here. We've got a few with some additional artists on it as well. But another EP if you're looking for something that will possibly get you moving. The next one, Sinitsin. Sorry, I don't know what's up with my voice right now. I'm going to keep this one short, the explanation. This is Detroit techno. And that's kind of a nebulous. It's got like this retro futuristic vibe. You'll I think pick up on that when I start playing it. For anybody who has heard of Drexciya had I think 3 of their albums or 3 compilations. They were quite influential on that scene. They were reissued about 10 years ago. Not all in one year, but over the course of the period. Anyway, if you're familiar with Drexciya, and if you're not, you should check them out. Drexciya. They've got a very similar sound, but their sound is they have like more of an aquatic theme, whereas this here is definitely heavier into the sort of cybernetic or industrial thing that's going on here. So let's give the title track a listen, and you should be able to understand like what the quote unquote maybe Detroit sound is. Again, retro futuristic. Think of it like that. So it just kind of keeps on in that same vibe. We'll check. There's only 3 tracks on the EP: Cognitive, Robots, Cut and Cover, and then Sublime. Here's the last one. But the vibe is kind of the same all through. So, yeah, just again, they have it labeled as house here on Yandex, which I guess is what they're going for. But yeah, it's definitely not that. But yeah, retro futuristic. Do the robot while you're hanging around by yourself. Up next, we have. I don't know how you pronounce this artist's name. I think it's ioneweb or I1web. But the Lily EP here. Now, the Lily EP it's an EP. There's 8 tracks, and when I take the picture down, you'll be able to see it. 4 of them are actual songs. There's a variation of one song, and then there are 3 remixes here. So it's a kind of a grab bag of types of tracks, but it's the electro house sound that I was a big fan of when I really got into techno or like electronic music to some degree, maybe 20-ish years ago. A lot of these thick slabs of the wonky bass, a little bit reminiscent of maybe uh, Benny Benassi or the Bloody Beetroots. But yeah, it's the type of music that feels like, again, it would have been played at a big festival or like some big club show where um, the floor would have just gone absolutely nuts. And honestly, the remixes are not bad either. So I've got nothing bad to say about the remixes. Let's just check out the title track though. That wonky bass line feels like it's going to shake itself out of alignment. All right, I'm going to have to jump ahead because so it's a sound that I think most people are familiar with if they have listened to any electronic music over the years, especially, like I said, in the last 20 or so. And yeah, right. We've got sort of three. There's a variation of the title track, and then another track, and then some remixes there at the end. But yeah, a nice EP. All said. Okay, we are jumping over to Bandcamp now, and I honestly wasn't sure what to do with this one because it's it's a compilation album, and I'm always a little on the fence about these because some tracks are usually quite good, others are kind of so-so, and then some of them are, I don't want to say stinkers, but they're just really not doing anything for me. But I felt that when I after the first few tracks, when I kind of got into the groove here, yeah, this is from a label out of St. Petersburg, New School Ravers, and this is their second compilation volume 2. This is, well, basically, I remember growing up in suburban Des Moines and hearing whispered in the late '90s into the early 2000s, hearing whispered rumors of all sorts of crazy raves that were happening in abandoned buildings and specifically barns too. Like barn raves was the big thing in those mostly pre-internet days. But you know, we obviously didn't ever go to those because we were in high school and just, yeah, it was another world. But obviously, I still have, and I had this imagined version of what that would have been like. And I don't know, maybe my imagination was pretty close, maybe not. But when I was listening to this music and when I kind of got into it, it definitely felt like that imagined rave. Um, I have no idea how close this is in terms of music to the rave sound of those days or even now, but it is a lot of frenetic energy. There are a lot of vocal samples from 2000 rap songs. Um, like It's Going Down is on here, which is pretty fantastic. And there's just like a lot of tilted beats all through this thing. So if raves were anything like the music on this compilation, I'm a little sad I missed out, but I suppose it's never too late to break out the pacifiers and the glow sticks. So let's just give it a little bit of a listen here and see what we got. This will take a second to load because of the VPN. So take. I'm gonna jump ahead because got the slow, got to build in the beginning, but sort of airy. All right, let's go. There we go. Here are the vocal samples. It's gonna be super annoying to some people. I get that, but I feel like I would have loved this in high school. It's kind of off the wall. So yeah, again, that's I think not gonna do it for many people, but for the few that are open to it, it's worth checking out. And a lot of artists, most of them are from Russia, but there are a few from Europe on the label as well. So anywho, moving on. Up next, we have Somnambulism by A Fruit. A Fruit is a Russian artist that currently resides in Barcelona. And this album is a really good example of why I'm enjoying doing these streams because I get to listen to all this music. And normally I would just listen to the music and not really think much of it. But now I have to describe it. And I have to try to put into words what I'm hearing. And sometimes I have to do a little bit of digging. And when I do that digging, sometimes I come upon new genres that I've heard before, but that I never really knew were actual genre. And this is a good case in point. This is a genre which, and it isn't even like a fully recognized genre, but some people label it as half step, which is, as they describe it, a subgenre of drum and bass, which again, most people would probably just write off as experimental drum and bass. It's got a little bit of the left field thing going on there with the spacey sounds and the ambient noises, but it's different. It's not it's not the thing I would listen to a lot, but there's something there. A little bit of dub happening right there. It's just all over the place, but there's still that drum and bass rhythm. It just feels slowed down or off kilter a bit. So, yep, you get the idea. It's only 6 tracks, but they are quite sizable, so it's a decently longer playing release here. All right, now we're getting to the last two in the electronic category. It's been kind of long going, but the first one here is from an artist, КУОК, I guess is how you say it. The album is 1725 ADHD, and we got to talk a little bit about КУОК. Now, he's mainly associated with rap, at least here in Russia in the last, say, 5 years or so, because that's basically what his releases have been. But he came out of the electronic scene. In fact, if I remember correctly, he actually started his music career in Prague, I think someplace in Eastern Europe like that. And when you listen to his rap releases over the last few years, you can still hear the electronic thing in there. He's definitely in his music going with very heavy electronic style beats rather than the traditional like rap and hip hop that you're perhaps most familiar with. And this new album here is him working alongside himself. In fact, on a lot of the song credits, you can see they have КУОК. So they have the Russian spelling of his name and then the English spelling of his name. So he is featuring himself on there. There's a lot of it feels like a stopgap. It's a full album for sure, but there are quite a few reworks of previous tracks that he has done before. One of them would be Le Javoya, and I think Metamorphosis is also a reworking, but I don't remember about that one for sure. I think there's like 4 reworks on this album, and but then there's some remixes as well, and there are a few new instrumentals. Regardless, if you're not familiar with his work, which I'm assuming that's basically everybody listening to this, it's probably not it's probably not the best introduction to him, just because there aren't that many vocals on there. There's still quite a few of them, but this is a good introduction to him as an electronic musician, which is what he is first and foremost. So I'm going to go ahead and just play a little bit of 3 tracks off this album so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. And I'm going to skip around like I normally do. All right, let's jump ahead. And the third one here. So yeah, as you can see, the song's quite a bit different. There's even in just those 3 tracks, there's a wide variety of sounds and even genres happening there. So it makes for a very interesting listen. And this is supposed to be a taste of what's to come. Evidently, he is planning a more traditional album coming in the spring, so in the next few months. So we'll have to see. But for now, yeah, this is a nice listening, and honestly, it's a well put together, well produced electronic album because he's a good electronic producer. But it's not my favorite electronic album of the week. That is going to be this album right here. This is Imagine by it's by Anderdog with also Dessin Bizarre. Now, this is IDM, and IDM is without a doubt probably like my favorite thing in the electronic scene. This is a short album. It's not really an EP. It's got 6 tracks and they're all relatively long, but it ticks all of the boxes for things that I really like with electronic music. It's danceable most of the time, but not always. It's full of these kind of contrasting sounds in terms of instrumentation and mood. It dabbles in more styles than I would care to count or list out. It's densely layered, and it's meditative yet engaging. Those last 2 parts are really important because it means when you go back and listen to it, you'll pick up on new things, or you'll notice how certain layers play with each other, or maybe interact with other layers that you hadn't noticed before. And this is the type of music that feels like it would be really good with psychedelics, you can just astral project yourself out. Or if that's not your vibe, or that's against the law where you happen to be, then you can just grab some nice headphones and lay in the dark and just let your eyeballs ping pong back and forth under your eyelids as they are attempting to follow the aural landscapes that are unfolding before your closed eyes. This is good stuff, and it's a really good album, we'll say. So let's give 2 tracks here a listen. I'm going to jump ahead. Like, you can move to this, but it's meditative, and there's a ton of layers. There's a lot going on here. And it keeps unfolding. It's like a kaleidoscope of sound. All right, let's give another track a shot. I'm going to just jump right into the middle of it. Here we go. Oh yeah, I love the weird vocal thing going on here too. Like almost, it could be like from Bon Iver or something. All right, I gotta stop it. I'll get lost in the track. So. Yeah, this is just a nice, very, very relaxing, but also very engaging. And I gotta say, I probably should have said this at the beginning. All of the music I listened, even though we are now on the 5th of February, all of the music I'm going to be talking about is still from January. For better or worse, the first few days of February have been kind of slow. Typically, albums are released here on Friday, which means that come the day after tomorrow, there will be a new slew of albums, but it gave me an extra few days to catch up with January to some degree. And yeah, this is, in terms of electronic music, is probably one of the best ones from the month. So, all right, we're done with electronic music for now, and my program is slowly putting these to sleep. So that is kind of frustrating, but all right. We're moving on to rap and hip hop. There's only 3 albums, so we'll be able to move through it quickly. Well, quickly in the sense that, yeah. All right. So the first one here is an EP from one of those Moscow Patsans. This is Irish, and I don't know how you say his name. It's PSWZ, PSWZ. There's got to be a better way to say that. PSWZ. I don't know. Doesn't matter. This is his Don't Cry EP. It's very kind of like life on the street and that type of thing. But what is kind of beautiful about it, it is the Memphis sound. It's 3-6 Mafia and the like, and it is done very, very well with the sampling and everything. It's a very good representation of that sound, and it's done very well. So just give you a listen.
Это мой тайм, мама, don't cry. Улица может нас воспитать.
It's like low and slow. All right. Give another track a shot.
Money from these hoes, man. That's what I need. What's up with that weed, man? We blowing trees. Money from these hoes, man.
And this flow is not bad when we get to it.
Строго холод суда, голод он не сука, но так сводит с ума. За наши поступки постоянно растет сумма. Поворот не туда, этот волтопорт не дамага. Побью тебе в голову глубоко, как метро андеграунд. What's up, это мой сленг, взрываем weed.
So, very short. It's 5 tracks. It's like 10 minutes long maximum. But I was not expecting the Memphis rap sound to pop up here in Moscow at the end of January. But hey, all right, I'll take it. Up next, we have another small album. And I'm going to screw up the pronunciation. The album is Outside. I got that one. But this is Techlíkidi. I don't know exactly where the where the stress mark is there, but Techlíkidi. I don't know. I don't know how they want that to be pronounced. I'm sure native Russian speakers can figure that one out immediately. But what I'll say was this: Russia has never had a problem with rappers. There's lots of good rappers in Russia, but the hip hop game, which I always just felt is more of that. It's less aggressive and bleak. It's more introspective on that end of the spectrum. Hip hop in my mind it's the artists who they don't necessarily make overtures to being indie, but they're okay with rubbing shoulders with indie artists. I find that part of the genre, the hip hop end of things, sorely lacking here in Russia a lot of the times. But this short album right here is just that. It feels like it's got a little bit of the Jurassic 5 DNA, even a little bit of the early Kanye and early Drake in there as well. And it features a track with Yerkat, Samolyot, the third track on the album. And Yerkat in 2024 released one of the best indie albums of the year. So we've got them rubbing shoulders with the indie, or I guess him rubbing shoulders with an indie artist. So we've got that box checked as well. And yeah, it's just like, it's a bright, kind of positive sounding album. Although I did see this described probably accurately so as hip hop for adults or not very happy people. So it's not all sunshines and rainbows. It just sounds like that, which is okay.
Когда был мальцом с удивленным лицом, двор как будто остров, я его Робинзон. И Децл кольцом, это наяву сон. Все мечтал, что буду заклинателем слов. Когда был мальцом с удивленным лицом, двор как будто остров, я его Робинзон. И Децл кольцом, это наяву. Из души никого не обманывал, расписывал дворы краской матовой, оглушая их куплетами, раскатами. Я вливал, да не помню, заливал, хату кровью забивал, до безумия позволял, все, что кроме поломал, зубья копий, а реальность. Но это музыка, как была тогда.
Again, you might not understand what's being said, but it's more introspective than anything.
Не просто про у винила заикание, это тру будто молодое конь.
The instrumental here definitely reminds me of like old Drake.
Значит труд его. Если я Пабло, то не Руда. Палит авангард, кратер Меркурия среди цветастых куполов. Она целует меня в губы, да. Вся ярость тает, как мармелад. Или сознание Будды, когда Шанхай с Калькуттой спрячет.
So, just a nice. I haven't heard any Russian rap or hip hop like this in a long time. I'm sure somebody in the comments, if they stumble upon this live stream later on, will be quick to point out that, oh yeah, you're forgetting about this artist or that artist, but which is possible. But this is what I had in front of me. So, and this one right here, though, we got to talk about the best one. If that last one was that sort of maybe not for the happiest of people and for adults, but still felt kind of bright and introspective, this is the yin to the yang of that album. This is ATL and Katet with Вечный двигатель, or the, like, what is that? Вечный двигатель is like the eternal. It's the machine that never stops moving, and I cannot remember the term in English right now. It doesn't matter. ATL is actually and they're appropriately quartets on the left and ATL's over here on the right. ATL is an artist that I first encountered. I guess you could probably say towards the start of his career with the song Marabu and and that album, and I really enjoyed that album. Really loved that title track as well. It was this kind of techno rap, a little bit like КУОК, but different because, well, just different. Um, and it's like that kind of techno rap, but there was a lot of crooning, I suppose, is how I would describe it. And wasn't a huge fan of that necessarily, but it all worked together. And I hadn't really paid attention to him for a number of years, but fast forward basically a decade after Marabu, and whatever was kind of bright and maybe upbeat in his music has been extinguished, right? The bright beats have been replaced with their uh, antithesis, techno antithesis. We have a lot of dark industrial sounds here, heavy bass that just crunches under its own weight, cold analog synthesizers. ATL, who a lot of people wouldn't consider the strongest of rappers, is joined with Katet, his label mate, and the two of them work very well. Ka literally goes Buster Rhymes mode on the Back to Basics, the third track. This album is the sound, and the artwork sums up perfectly. It's the sound of disintegrating Soviet industrial cities abandoned to their own fates in modern Russia. Um, Last year, I was in love with the album, an album by Zaraza, and it has the same vibe as that. And I do have to point out the fact that there is a song on this album. It's the seventh one, Tarakan, which is kind of a reinterpretation of Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, but on the track, basically Gregor Samsa, the cockroach, just like goes hard on the dance floor with his foot stepping. So, which is a hell of an idea, but we're not going to be checking that one out. But I am going to be giving you a taste of three just really, really good tracks. It's not supposed to be welcoming. Just
Зацепился за карниз, последний осенний лист, но и он сорвется, полетит по спирали вниз. Бег по колесу сансары заскрипит, будто мениск. Этот старый механизм, убийца тупит. С нами тут случится жизнь, и полно головоломок. Ни хера ты тут не знаешь, да и мне все незнакомо. Мы на Фоксе палим боба, будто шкура охот на копа. А вокруг театр абсурда, цирк из говора столопов. На умные вопросы я ответов не знаю, на глупые вопросы отвечать не хочу. Пусть я столько пропустил на уроках, угорая. Слышь, дружище, научи, я постучу по плечу. Очередной звонок, система моя нервная терпела. Это школа жизни, порой так неприятно. По доске боженька стучит, это альфа-штрих. Альфа-штрих, дельта, альфа-бета, штрих, дельта, альфа-бета, гамма, дельта, бета, альфа-штрих, дельта, альфа, альфа-штрих, дельта, альфа-бета, штрих, дельта, альфа-бета, гамма, дельта, бета, альфа-штрих, дельта, альфа, альфа-штрих, дельта, альфа-бета, штрих,
and then
дельта,
I gotta wait for
альфа-бета,
that bass to come crashing in.
Вечный двигатель, 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 вечный двигатель, двигатель. Вечный двигатель, 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 вечный двигатель, двигатель, вечный двигатель.
All right. Yeah, this is the one I was talking about, Back to Basics. I'll let this play a little bit and then too, and I'm going to jump to where Katet has his...
Вот работа вновь под ногтем, черный полумесяц. Ночью снова бредить на тезис, антитезис. Вот работа вновь под ногтем, черный полумесяц. Так уж мозг устроен, сброс настроек, back to basics. Ночью снова бредить на тезис, антитезис. Вот работа вновь под ногтем, черт. Так что несу свою голову в логово. Слово острее, как телога, лого закрутится локоном. Меткий стрелок, силы слога высокого крали зацокала. Хоры Рогана, вылезу из темноты, как из кокона. Мог зашиваться, но верю, не стал тупо штопаном. Кто этот гром среди шепота? Времени немало, нами было тут убито. Не запутали быкитов, эти тупики виды захотели на типах. Это не остановило наше поле силовое из керамиты. Расскажи мне, как обои родиться терапитом. Это паханное поле только нашими руками. Да невыносимо боли, потеряли свои силы, нацеплялись видодела прямо до энцефалита. Это high skills, big deals, high.
And like I'm not one of those people who thinks that like fast rapping equals good rapping, but if you pull the lyrics up, it's not just a bunch of gibberish. He's spitting incredibly fast, but his words are not empty. And then one last little sample here, which is, you know, aptly titled Industrial.
Тут ветер обшмонал карман. Вечный мрак с губ свисает полный бред. Мат используют чаще, чем Ван Гогом желтый цвет. Эти желтые пеньки зубов жуют проблемы мюсли. Все проверится на деле, так что верь хоть вицли-пуцли. Громкие звуки промки, громче колонки. Тут думалка молчит, когда речь реал. Индастриал, в пояснице прострел. Индастриал, в ухе застрял. Индастриал, в пояснице прострел. Индастриал, в ухе застрял. Индастриал, в пояснице прострел.
So, yeah, ATL, Katet, Вечный двигатель, just probably the best rap album of the year thus far. And a really good example of something that Russian rap does, that dark, heavy, just soul-crushing, like industrial sound, techno rap. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's not something that I've really encountered much outside of Russia / the former Soviet Union. So, so yeah, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second, and I gotta pour some water. All right, so we are. Oh yeah, we still got some ways to go, but we're through with the electronic and the rap. We're going to get into the rock and metal next, and then we will finish today with pop and indie, simply because that is where the best albums were this week. So, okay, let's get the screen back up. We'll close that one. All right, kicking us off in the rock and metal genre, we have the EP Slow Burner by Machina Polnaya Zla. Machina Polnaya Zla. Slow Burner. Yeah, the EP. This, all right, I'm gonna stop playing around with that. This is a noise rock group from St. Petersburg, but they aren't afraid to lean into like a glitched out electronic sound. That's my VPN. I'm gonna go ahead and move that out of the way. And what was I trying to say? Yeah, they classify themselves as breakcore, so like glitch beats and noise rock. But and they do throw in a breakdown or two in their music. But yeah, let's give the second track on the EP a quick shot. There's the noise. So a lot of noise is happening there. Just the traditional rock, noisy noise rock, and then the electronic noise, and then the vocal noise. So if you don't like noise, then you're probably not going to like it. But if you do, it's an interesting EP, and it's, again, right, we're looking at like 12 minutes, 12, 15 minutes. So it's a nice one. We're kicking off with EPs. Next up, we have the EP by Grimed. This is Put Vayny, or I think Warpath. They actually have a translated version. I don't know if they sing in English. I listened to the Russian version, so I can't tell anything about it. This is deathcore out of Chelyabinsk, and I'm not really a connoisseur of the genre. This stuff seems pretty standard here on this EP, but I will say if you like Slaughter to Prevail, another deathcore group out of Russia, which are currently based in Miami in the United States with Alex Terrible. Yeah, maybe Slaughter to Prevail. Maybe you've heard them. But if you enjoy Slaughter to Prevail, you probably will find something enjoyable here. We're going to listen to the last track here, Жизнь в гробу. Deathcore. Let's jump ahead. So yeah, I mean, pretty standard deathcore sound. It's a little, and I from what I remember, that track's a little bit slower than some of the other ones on the EP. But it's definitely not as intense as Slaughter to Prevail. But I mean, they're doing their own thing there. So, but still, if that's your sound, this is a nice EP for you. Beyond that, we have another EP, Опять 25, which literally means again 25, which is the name of the group. What I'm going to say is this: if anybody remembers the Epitaph Records in the late 90s into the early thousands, released a bunch of sampler CDs. Not sampler CDs, they were compilation CDs. They were called Punkorama. There were 10 of them in total, and it was basically a way for them to advertise who was on their roster, which artists were on their roster. It was the full spectrum of suburban punk music, Punkorama. I think I had 2 or 3 of the discs myself. The 3 tracks on this incredibly short EP, which some might say is actually just a single, any of these tracks would feel right at home on a Punkorama album. So if you're missing that suburban punk of the late 90s, early 2000s, this will feel right at home for you. Or on a Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtrack. That's also a good place. Like Millen Collin or the Beat Steaks. You get the idea. Yeah, a lot of Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtrack vibes, which is cool. They re-released the game. It still is hella fun to play. So moving on, we have Некуда бежать. This is the Мировой пожар EP, and this would also be right at home on a Punkorama album, but this is more of the politically charged punk. This group has a bit of some love for the old communist days. I've seen them described as Natsbol punks, which Nacionalные Bolsheviki, so like the Bolshevik kind of party. And there's definitely a bit more hardcore than the pop punk, but like I said, still could be at home on a Punkorama compilation. The lyrics are quite against the political oligarch class and everything that is happening. In fact, this other track I'll play, Другая Россия, is literally Other Russia.
Революцию сделать, не потеряв и пуговицы от пальто, не получится. Наша страна хочет красного. Она хочет больше красного, кричит наша с вами страна каждый день вопиет. Больше красного! Больше красного! Больше красного!
There's that hardcore sound. Jumping ahead.
Дома, на запястье браслет, в спину автомат. Другая Россия, другая Россия, другая Россия. Всем нам нужна другая Россия.
So, yeah, that I think that does it for the punk end of things today. And I didn't realize Lazerchoke was still open. All right. Moving on, we are at Nikakik Atgavorok with their album Zme, which you can probably guess means snake. When I was in high school, and I remember this well, we discovered Hatebreed. And my friends and I, we loved that intense hardcore music that Hatebreed made, but we were even more enthralled with the lyrics and this idea of Jamie Jasta being the most pissed off and aggressive motivational speaker ever. That's kind of what's going on with Nikakik Agavorok. This is a young group out of Kirov that is also into that sort of motivational hardcore. And the one thing I would say with this short album is the cleans in the singing on songs like Pomni, they don't really quite hit right. I feel like the cleans need to be reworked a little bit, but overall the stuff is decent. Lots of heavy riffs and breakdowns, and lyrics that are ultimately formulaic, but still work fine in a genre which is built on these kind of one-off self-help mantras. So let's give this a quick listen. We're just going to jump into it. Get ready. Hatebreed. Yeah. Yeah, those cleans, they're just not, they're not great. So whoever's doing the singing should either reconsider that or rethink that. But yeah, let's check out another song. This is that like Rise of Brutality, Hatebreed era sound. Yeah. Honestly, if they got rid of the cleans, it would be significantly better. It's a good album, but that is a major detractor, I guess is what I would say. So, yeah, if they run into this, I've actually had, I will point this out, I've actually had a number of bands. I feel like one or maybe two, well, no, probably one per week, just because the YouTube algorithm flags the music. And then I'm assuming that some of them online get notification and then they go to check out what it is. If Nikakik Atgavorok see this, guys, do something about the cleans. Just either get rid of them or figure out another way, but it's very nasally, very whiny, and kind of listening to it right now again. Had I re-listened to this earlier today, I might have cut it from the list. But anyway, moving on. We're here. We're moving on. Not everything is perfect, so it's a first shot. We'll see where they go from there. Up next, we have a metalcore group, the Parallels with Edem. And yeah, metalcore is a genre that never really disappeared from the metal scene, but sometime in the last decade, it just basically came to dominate the whole genre and metal as a whole, it seems like, which means that there's a lot of metalcore to choose from. But I would say that most metalcore doesn't really do anything interesting. It just kind of all sounds the same. But that's not really the case here with the Parallels. They have added symphonic elements, mainly in the form of strings and backing synths. But there's also a choir on one or maybe two of the tracks, and that livens up the form a little bit. It makes it feel a little bit fresher. And what I will say is what also is really good here too are that the vocals, both the growls and the singing, are done very, very well. And the band just absolutely shreds and slams through the music entirely. And this is only their second LP, so they've they got only way to go but up. Right, the cleans there. Yeah, the from the screams into the clean singing and then back in the vocals there just work so good. So yeah, if you like metalcore, this is just a nice metalcore album. You'll enjoy it. You're gonna have a good time with it. And speaking of metalcore, we have the next group, the Koloss, with their album Холодная тишина, Cold Silence, if you will. Just another good set of metalcore as well, but I would say this has more of a gent edge to it. There is less clean singing. The vocals are more growls and like the high pitched screeches. But there are still definitely cleans, especially in the choruses. So let's check out a little bit of that too. More metalcore, ultimately. I'm just gonna jump into it. Boop. There's that gent type of sound. Cleans. All good. All right, let's give another track a listen here. This is the title track, so. Yeah, last track wasn't very metalcore, come to think of it. It's just like genty, kind of heavy, hard rockin' metal. Ugh. This feels a bit more appropriate. Yeah, there we go. And then one more here. Gniew Kolossa. God damn it. My transitions from English into 2 words of Russian just got awful. Yeah, there's a lot more gent in this, which is perfectly fine. All right, yeah, you get the idea. So yeah, 2 nice metalcore albums for you to choose from if you enjoy metalcore. And I think probably anybody who listens to metal these days is probably into metalcore because that, like I said, is the dominator when we're talking about metal music these days. Moving on though, this was actually the last album I listened to when putting everything together. This is Existentor. Don't really know what's going on with the group name, but Existentor and Probuzhdenie. I'm just going to go with the most reductive description possible, but I'm going with it because as I was listening to the album, it kept popping into my mind multiple times, and it's just this. It's Linkin Park plus metalcore plus kind of Russian alt rock, like a dollop of that last, but it's like a lot of Linkin Park and metalcore. And you know what? That's totally fine. Both of those are good things. So for anybody who was maybe not super pleased with the reunion for whatever reason that Linkin Park had late last year, maybe give this album a shot, and you might hear something there that scratches the itch that you didn't realize you had. So let's give two of the tracks here a listen from Probuzhdenie by Existentor. The first one is Abman.
Зеркал кто-то поманит прыгнуть в огонь. Ложь — это первое звено, правды грех, будто нота посреди. Однажды пойдет обман. Ночь разливается и бег мысли.
And the title track. It's maybe not metalcore as much as I initially thought. It might be more of like just like the alt metal, alt rock sound.
Все, что узнал я от тебя, лишь фальшь тех слов из пустоты. Не отвечаешь ты за них, плетешь свои из них холсты. Любит, не любит, кусая губы. Я знаю, что в твоих словах правды больше нет. Так просто все нам усложнять, и так не просто все.
I think those screams remind me a lot of Chester from Linkin Park. So, yeah, it's definitely not bad. It's doing its own thing. So, moving on. Dog Chasing Sun with the album Outlaw Till the End. And I probably should have reorganized these a little bit because I was not sure if this was my favorite rock / metal album or not. The next one probably should be here, but whatever, we're going with it now. If you don't know by now, let me make it perfectly clear that well-made instrumental music, especially instrumental metal music, is probably some of my favorite. And it's just because when it's done well, it can be atmospheric and vibe at the same time. It can crawl and thrash. It can tell a story without actually saying anything. This album, which is evidently the work of a rather prolific one-man band project, does all of the things within the genre of stoner and doom. But this isn't as heavy or fuzzy as the album I featured last week, Tsar by Holy Watts. There's a lot more in terms of clean tones, and the instrumentation has a few keyboards and some alternative percussion as well. What I'll say is this: it's the type of music that fits the album's artwork. Two grizzled dredges of society from a Quentin Tarantino film blasting through the hazy environs of the United States West in a 1968 Mercury Cougar, whatever that is supposed to be. It's what the story is. I don't know. It doesn't matter. We got that stoner metal solo over the just like heavy riffing. Just gonna keep jumping around a little slower here. But here we're really laying into the doomier sound. And the final track. So yeah, low, stoned, and fuzzed out. The album is outlaw till the end, and it's a trip, honestly. Okay, the one that I probably should have had in that place. This is Stridiliji. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me. The group is Talmachi or Talmachi. I don't know. Stridiliji, Предательство и Смут. Holy crap, I butchered that. This is an EP. Let me do it. Среди лжи, предательства и смут. Okay, slightly better. Not perfect, but still. Another EP, so I probably should have put this towards the beginning. But when I first heard this, my impression initially was, oh, hey, another Russian group that is attempting to sound like Clutch. And while that is still largely true, and that's not a bad thing, the Clutch sound is a very good sound to go for. The concept of the band is what makes them kind of awesome. They're out of Kazan, but instead of calling themselves a band, they call themselves a musical LLC, as in limited liability company. They call themselves Coach Rock, as in business coach. They take the corporate bullshit that many people are so fed up with, and they build songs around empty business phrases and ideas, loans, taxes, office supplies. It's like the guys from Office Space dropped acid and then just started a kick-ass rock group. It's such a weird concept, but it works so well.
Грязь и рвота, нищета и серость. Из говна и палок собираем пальмы. Лепим, глэпинг, лепим, глэпинг. Лепим, глэпинг, лепим, глэпинг. Лепим, глэпинг, лепим, глэпинг.
Obviously, understanding the lyrics does help a little bit, just because you can understand the silliness that they're singing about, but musically it's still solid. And one more from the group.
восприятие, чтоб распахнуть врата восприятия и не закрывать. На ура! И не наркотики, не раскурить, и не уколоть их, и не зашмыгнуть, и не расколоть их, и нечем отмеривать грамм. Доступны после оплаты каннабиной.
So that's Dalmachi. And then the last one, the one that probably, I think ultimately, even after Dog Chasing Sun, probably the best metal album of the week. Dog Chasing Sun, we can say, was like the best rock album, and this is the best metal album. This is Pyre with Where Obscurity Sways. It's the third LP, the first in, I think, 5 years out of a group from St. Petersburg. And just simply put, this is classic death metal. There are some elements of groove metal in here, and there's definitely a lot of technical fret work going on when it comes to the solos. I would say the only bad thing on this are the tracks Wandering and Descending. You can see they're short. These are just kind of interludes. And the only reason that I would say they're bad is because they just kind of feel like filler. They keep you from the just speed and riffing of the rest of the album. It's good old fashioned death metal. Not even the technical, just like, yeah. Oh, yeah. There we go. Changes up a little bit. Just needed to find it. There's that. Yeah. Also, I'll point out that they do sing in English, so yeah, it's the bar to entry for non-Russian speakers is a lot easier. So it's much lower. And then one other track here. Oh, yeah. There's the soloing. Yeah. Yep. It's fantastic. Really good album. Really good death metal. And actually, I don't think we've had any. There was one death metal album I talked about in the first week I was doing this. I forget the name of it. One man out of Krasnodar, and it was good. It's more like the technical. This is just like that classic, and so yes, big ups to that. Moving on to the final category, pop and indie, and we have the EP Gaz by Art. This is a one-man indie project, as far as I can tell, that has 1 foot in the era of the garage rock indie revival era, a la The Strokes and their peers. And the other foot is planted firmly in the rock of the 1970s with the warm guitar tones and the kind of electric organs. Ultimately, there's nothing super memorable on any of these 4 tracks, but it's a pleasant experience to listen to in the same way that just like a sunny day is nice. You don't necessarily remember it for anything in particular, but it's enjoyable while it lasts.
Резко стало, и празднично темно, и
So that's, I feel like more along the lines of the Strokes and that early 2000s. And then here, let's go with something that should have more of the, there we go. There's that electric organ.
Чтоб он не бросил на костер, чтоб спрятал всех под бородой. В тепле подумают немного, когда сам саване уж гной. И сам старик без ноги, как хочется, чтоб он пришел, окропил своей святостью раны, что возникли, когда он зашел у него, потому что был без охраны.
So 4 tracks kind of between those two sounds. And like I said, like a warm, sunny day. Not necessarily memorable, but pleasant nonetheless. Okay, up next we have Gipna Gem, or Hypno Jam, if you want to anglicize it. Gipna Gem with Via from 60s. Via, for anybody who doesn't know, is a Soviet acronym for Vocal Instrumental Ensemble. Just it was the old Soviet term for group, musical group. These guys are out of Omsk in Siberia, and from the 60s, as they'd have you believe. And this group is in the same vein as the OCs. It feels like they were discovered in the garage of some hippie recluse, hidden away from time and society under, I guess, a tarp somewhere behind a dusty old VW Bug. Or I guess Zhiguli, probably in this case. And the group was reawakened when they were discovered. And evidently, whatever the hippie had stashed away in that garage, they found their way into it while they were catching up on the last 60 years or so of pop culture. It is musically raw and loud, but most importantly, it's not too serious. It's just fun. These guys love that old sound, and they are just having fun playing it. And one other track here. Tracks 7 and 8, just if that matters to anybody. Is that almost a little bit of surf rock as well? So, yep. Via from 60s by Gipna Gem. Very summery. It's the type of album that feels like it would be best listened to in the warmer months. But who knows? Maybe where you are right now, it's already relatively warm. Okay, we're coming into the final stretch here. We have Sianya by Angel Vox. This is light indie pop. It's got a lot of cold synths and that kind of airy sound, a lot of double backing vocals where she doubles her own voice up. Sounds a lot like Zola Jesus, who I'm going to mention here again very soon. Zola Jesus was way ahead of the curve when she came out, like in 2012. More or less, this is upbeat music, but there is a lot of melancholy streaks throughout the songs. Yeah, this is just, it's nice indie pop. got the synths, got the airy vocals. You'll probably notice a sound palette emerging.
Мы с тобой друзья, да, я знаю, а друзьям нельзя. Да, я знаю, мы с тобой друзья, да, я знаю. Больше не друзья, мы больше не, больше чем друзья.
And definitely a more upbeat one here. Feels like Funky Town at the beginning, right?
Руки, руки обнимают, руки, руки обнимают меня, руки, руки обнимают, я смотрю в твои глаза. Забудь, поверь, пройдет, пока танцуй.
Yeah, I would say of all the albums this week, this is the most actual pop music of anything here. So anyway, moving on to xvostik. I don't know how to say this name, but I'm going with it. Xvostik. Or, oh my God, I'm an idiot. It's Russian X, so it's xvostik. Wow. Sometimes I'm so stupid, I amaze myself. So xvostik here with Shadows at 3 a.m. There's never going to be another We Share Our Mother's Health by The Knife. It's just not going to happen. But that off-kilter sound of electronics is here. And listening to it, it feels like there's a little bit of that DNA baked into this mix. Though it is filtered through more modern pop sensibilities and vulnerabilities, specifically again of Zola Jesus. I know it's more likely than not Billie Eilish now who is the one who's influencing it, but I would say that sound, when you actually go and observe it in comparison to what Zola Jesus was doing, it's probably closer to her than Billie Eilish. Visually, we might be going more for Billie Eilish. In terms of sonically, we're hitting closer to Zola Jesus. And then everybody who followed in her steps. There is a lot of UK techno sound here, especially drum and bass as well, and a lot of Russian pop sensibilities. All of that baked up and experienced. This is the new generation. This is the Zoomers, the Zoomies. And yeah, it's just a, one of those albums which approaches the uncertainties of youth, especially the uncertainties of youth in the awkward hours between the night and the morning, specifically 3 a.m. So, all right, let's give a listen to some of the stuff from Shadows at 3 a.m. First one we have is Timno. There's that. Убегаю. There's that UK D&B sound. And Cupid's song here for the last sample.
Тут звезды иные, я тебе все покажу. Я и сама не знаю примерно. И чуть ты уже догадался, что нравишься мне. Я снова спрячусь и закрою дверь.
So that modern electronic pop, which is a little bit darker and a little bit more vulnerable. It's good. It's a nice album. Okay, final three here. Thank God. All right, we have Shakuhachi on the mini pops. Shakuhachi on the mini pops. I think that is Shakuhachi, but the album is Telepathic Waves from Sahara, and the artwork is fantastic. Jesus Christ, look at this thing. Is that a Yeti? That's got to be a Yeti. I don't know. It doesn't matter. This is an indie group from Ufa, and they basically have taken the sounds of Tame Impala and Always, and then they just decided to take those sounds and completely meld them into the true sound of the warm psychedelic pop bands from the 1960s, like the Byrds, Jefferson Airplane, and the Mamas and Papas. This is honestly a phenomenal album from start to finish, and it's all in English, so the lyrics are good, and the sound is just beautiful. Again, assuming you enjoy that like old indie, not in, I guess it wouldn't be indie, but like the old 60s rock. But again, there's a lot of Tame Impala here as well, so. Just get on your fixed bicycle and ride it around the park. We'll jump into another track.
The phone is disconnected and everything go right. I could kill in a war. I could rape in a war. I could rob in the war. I could die in the war.
The lyrical content is somewhere between completely absurd but also kind of dark and serious, although you couldn't tell necessarily just from listening to it. But yeah, Shakuhachi on the mini pops, Telepathic Waves from Sahara, the name of the album. This is really, really good stuff. The final two. This is another one of the big releases of the month. When it finally loads, this is Coming Home by IC3PEAK. And some of you outside of Russia might have heard of IC3PEAK. They were kind of a big deal. I can actually link at their page open. They were kind of a big deal when they came onto the scene like a decade ago, basically. They had a very specific look. And if you go to some of the old videos, we're just going for the visuals. The visuals, they were very disturbing for Russia. Now, obviously, it's just people in white face paint and all that stuff, but they attempted to have a look at the darker side of life in Russia, politics, things just that were generally not spoken of. But yeah, so when and I remember in I think 2016 or 2018, I think 2016, when their album Skazka came out, and the reaction to it was basically the same reaction that the United States had with Marilyn Manson. Uh, Everybody freaked out. Politicians were upset. The cops were all against the group. Um, that group is kind of gone. Like they're still there, um, but musically, that sound, which everybody lumped into Witch House, which is fair. They definitely leaned into the darker electro sound, and their imagery was connected to the darker side of Russian folktales. Um, but after the start of the war, they left Russia. I can't remember their names. The woman went to Estonia, if I remember correctly, where she's from, and the guy went to Berlin. And they had some kind of questions like what was going to happen with the project, just like it happened with a lot of people who left after the war started. They had to think of what to do, and they came to some decisions. They didn't sign to a major record label, even though they had the choice. So it wasn't just the war. There were a lot of things brewing in their musical career as well. And this album is, I would say, it's less doom and gloom in a lot of ways, and raging against the machine. Definitely a lot of that, and it's more about them trying to figure out their place under the sun, where they can now call home. You can kind of see that too in the track listing. There are a lot of tracks with English titles, and they did sing in English in the past, but just never as much as they have on uh, on this album. So it does feel like them realigning a little bit with their new homes. Granted, the lyrics tend to be a bit simplistic and not always grammatically correct, but that's forgivable. It's understandable. The instrumentation has changed as well. It's shifted more to guitars and keyboards and drums, the setup that would make touring and performing a lot easier to deal with. And it gives the sound just a brighter aspect overall. A lot of people have labeled it as post-punk, and it's not post-punk. It's definitely more indie. Um, a lot of people are looking at this too in comparison to the album last year by Magnetichka, who was also a really big Russian artist who left after the war started and who did an amount of soul searching. And Magnetichka's album last year was definitely better than this one. This is a good album, but it doesn't stand in comparison to that one. It's just, they're different, I guess I would say. This is not weak by any measure, but doing a comparison between the two of them is also maybe not quite right. I think the best comparison I would draw here is going to be with 9 Inch Nails. And it's going to sound a bit weird, but, and it's not perfect, but when in, what would that be, 2006, I believe, when Trent Reznor released With Teeth, he went from the really dark, heavy industrial sound. Okay, fantastic. The really dark, heavy industrial sound of the Downward Spiral, and then the really over the top, dense, atmospheric of the Fragile. And then with Teeth, it was just this stripped back, basic instrumentation. And things felt definitely more upbeat, even though lyrically they maybe weren't in that place. And that's basically what it feels like with Coming Home here by IC3PEAK. Yeah, it's them being forced to grow and changed, and basically trying to make the best of the days that they have ahead of them, even if their thoughts do keep gravitating back towards the bleak. But all right, let's give this a listen. Где мой дом is probably one of the stronger tracks on the album, one of the better ones. The vocals are a bit of a turnoff for many, but they grow on you. Another one here. Musically, it's a radical departure in a lot of ways from their previous albums. Now this feels musically a bit like the old Ice Peak, but this does feel the most punky. The bass. So definitely something different for anybody who's not familiar with the Russian music scene, which again, guessing that's most. Ice Peak is an act worth exploring. Their back catalog has a lot of interesting stuff in it, and I would say stuff that's maybe a bit more accessible for first-time listeners. But if you're familiar with Ice Peak, then you should really listen to their latest album because it's them growing and maturing and adapting to what life has thrown at them. So, and that brings us to the final album, Omut by Purga, as I'm assuming how we pronounce this. Now, this snuck in on the last day of January, and it is the debut LP from a collective here in Moscow. The lyrics are often cryptic, but they have a sense of soul searching or just straight up astral projecting or something wicked this way coming. But perhaps that wickedness is coming from within. But still, when that wickedness does arrive, there's this sense of showing your tongue to it and just cheekily skipping away. If you don't understand Russian, or if you do but can't make heads or tails of what is attempting to be communicated, the music is going to have you covered there. This is the type of indie that I absolutely love. It utilizes any instrument that can be found from the regulars that you would expect in kind of like indie pop or rock to saxophone. We got a lot of dark electronics going on. There's a goddamn sitar, a lot of ethnic style woodwind instruments. And there's that weird bendy thing in percussion, which is called a flexitone. This thing, I am like dead positive this thing features on one of the songs, and I love it. I love the fact that they would put it in there. I'm pretty sure I heard it. Don't quote me on that. But it's not chaos. All of those weird instruments, it's not chaos. Everything fits into the tracks that they're on harmoniously, and it fills everything out overall. So what I want to say is this. This is kind of, it's technically February, but this is the last set of albums that I'm really going to be looking at from January. And if Zlo, with their album Oven, opened the month with what is likely to go down as one of the best metal albums of the year, then Purga is closing January out with what is likely to be one of the best and most complicated indie albums of the year. All I have to say is that if January is anything to measure the caliber of 2025 off of when it comes to Russian music, then we're in for a really solid year of really good music. So let's check out a few tracks here.
из рук летела на траву. Почувствуй тело, я живу, ловлю из памятного дна мои слова. Пролью дожди.
All right, we've got Cerebro. Skip ahead.
И говоришь, нас там не было, это ложь. Сквозь кисти ветвей сочится лунная кровь. Не болит, с ног до головы облиты. Мы становимся частью света. Безвременная планета детей обратила в ноль. Безмолвный пароль для вдоха. Возьми мое серебро, надень мое серебро, храни мое серебро, умри мое.
And Jula.
Город живет на спине у кита, рыб не пугает домов высота. Сбросить с балкона в большой океан, в чем заключался великий план. Строить и строить дом, резать картонных зверей и птиц, рисовать линии четких границ, забывать линии четких границ, рушить, ломать и закладывать бомбы в личные нравы, в умы катакомбы, резать спасательный трос послушно.
It's very active. Very active, all things considered. So that's Omut by Purga or Purga. Oh, all right. That is that's it. That was a lot. It's 29 albums. That's the most I've covered yet, and I really don't hope to do any more than 29 in the future. Although a lot were EPs, so that happens. Yeah, it's been a long month. I've got a lot under my belt so far when it comes to the music. But this week was a really good week. There was just a lot of good releases from Purga and IC3PEAK and the Shukuhachi or whatever it was. I cannot remember if I'm looking at the mini pop one. In the pop and indie category, Pyre with the death metal album and Dog Chasing Sun with that stoner doom, ATL and Katet with the just phenomenal dark rap album, and then Anderdog with the Imagine EP, or I guess album technically, in the electronic music. So just a lot of strong releases here at the end of January. I honestly hope that this Friday will be a little bit quiet so that I can I still have a little bit of catching up to do. There are some albums still that I have not listened to, such as, they're not anything major, but there's a few that I need to have a listen to still from January. But anywho, it's been much longer than I anticipated. So hopefully you heard something that you found interesting or enjoyable. Again, the links to all of the albums are down below. And above the links to the albums, there are links to the 4 genre playlists for Russian music. Those are all singles. Those are either songs that just have been released and are not on a specific album, or, and this happens sometimes too, especially like with electronic music or sometimes with rock albums, if there is 1 or 2 tracks on an album that otherwise I think is kind of meh, then I will put those 1 or 2 tracks into the playlist because, you know, they're still worth highlighting. And who knows, maybe you'll follow that artist on Spotify and listen to the rest of the album and discover something else. But a lot of music. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to wrap it up, and I will be back on Sunday, 9 p.m. Moscow time, 12 noon Central Time in the US, covering the news stories of the week. I guess the good news is right now, for anybody still watching this, that it has been a quiet week thus far, from Sunday till now. So hopefully next Sunday will be even easier. But I am going to go unwind a little bit before bed this evening. So everyone have a good afternoon or evening, or if you're watching this at some point later on, whatever time of the day it is. And I will talk to you later and see you when I see you. Take care.